Hi, I'm Oliver, and this is D-Talks. Today, I'm sat here with Tom Jarvis, Head of Design at Kingfisher, an international home improvement retailer with over 1,900 stores, operating as B&Q, Screwfix, Castorama, and Brico Depo. With a background in the trades, Tom's design career has often focused on tools, from his Royal College of Art graduation project to collaborations with startups, manufacturers, and global retailers. Over the past 15 years, he's designed and brought to market over 300 products, from power tools and hand tools to cleaning tools and painting tools, just to name a few. Tom, thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for joining us on the show. And I wanted to ask, from your perspective as head of industrial design at Kingfisher, what aspects of design declares and its values and its missions sort of align with your own design philosophy?
Yeah, well, one of the big things for me is the kind of sense of community. As I said earlier, I first came across Design Declares via the WhatsApp group, and I've found that to actually be a really useful resource, and actually to kind of feel part of a movement.
Yeah,
has really helped me. I also, a number of the kind of a number of the statements kind of resonate with me a lot. We've been talking a lot at work about how we measure success, and we kind of work on all these initiatives. But actually, unless you do that extra bit of work to kind of then go back and sort of try and quantify, the success of those initiatives, it's very hard to then talk about them.
Yeah,
and talk about them in a meaningful way, and then kind of, I guess, get other people involved in the movement.
And so has then acknowledging the sort of climate crisis in this sort of way, has that influenced how you approach design projects at Kingfisher, or with your team or yourself?
Well, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I mean, Kingfisher has always had sustainability on its agenda. It's not a new thing for Kingfisher. So in that regard, we're quite fortunate. Kingfisher was one of the first companies to adopt the FSC certification. We also have quite big ambitions with regard to, the reduction of Scope 3 emissions. So when we're talking about sustainability at work, there's a lot of very keen stakeholders. The reality is sometimes quite different, because ultimately we're a big business.
Yeah,
we need to make money. We need to sell. It's a big retail business whose model is to try and make home improvement accessible for everyone. Now, to do that, you've got to be very price conscious. You can't be selling stuff that's too expensive, because ultimately cost will end up alienating a huge portion of the customer base. So we have to balance the cost with our ambitions to kind of reduce our carbon emissions. And also it's complex in that we cover a number of different countries across Europe, who all have slightly different needs. So not only are we trying to juggle, the cost and the sustainability factors, but also the varying customer needs across all the different locations and the different types of sort of infrastructure that they have for recycling and various things. So it's complex. We've got 1,900 stores across Europe, and it's just a huge footprint, and so it's big business.
Sure.
But thankfully, because of that, by making small gradual changes, we are able to have quite big impacts. And look, we're not moving fast enough. I think we can all agree that there's definitely more to be done. We need to ramp up the speed at which we're making these changes. But it does mean that when you're operating, we sell nearly 6 million paintbrushes a year, and we're in the process of actually redesigning those at the moment. We've managed to reduce the plastic content of that paintbrush range by 48%. So just on one of those paintbrushes, we're saving 130 tons of virgin polypropylene per year. So it's these kind of quite small changes, and you wouldn't ever notice the difference when you pick up the paintbrush. But by focusing on things like plastic reduction, design for disassembly, design for transportation, and all these things, although they seem like small steps forward, in fact, they're having a sizable impact.
Because I mean, given those business pressures, and being able to make those small changes, is that what sort of keeps you motivated to keep advocating for it? Because like many small steps will make a big wave, and having to negotiate that in the office.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think as designers, we are all quite self-conscious about why we exist.
Yeah.
And the idea of creating stuff doesn't sit that well with certainly a lot of the designers I know. But that in a way is also why design is important, because the reality is, and I've only really come to realize that since working for such a kind of big organization, is that products will go to market without designers. The production machine will continue to chuck out stuff.
Yeah.
And so you either kind of add design to that and try and kind of create something which has more value, or you sit back and kind of just let that machine continue to produce stuff which inevitably ends up in landfill. So I believe that our role as designers in these big organizations is to try and add as much value to that raw material as possible, so that it basically stays out of the ground for as long as possible. That's basically what designers are here for. You get stuff comes out of the ground, the raw materials come out of the ground.
Yeah.
You shape it into a shape that means that it has value, and the more successful you are at adding that value, the longer it will stay out of the ground before it goes back into the landfill.
Yeah.
So when you kind of boil it down like that, I think our role is very important, and we are part of the solution, I think. And I think it's when I'm at work and we're talking about design, or when we're talking about sustainability, in my mind, we're also talking about design, because they're interlinked.
You can't have one without the other.
Yeah, I mean, the creating good things out of the stuff that we extract from the ground is so important, and this is where we've gone wrong. We haven't added enough value to the materials, and this is why we've got plastic everywhere,
yeah.
and piles of the stuff, and it uses a lot of energy to make it, and so it's interesting, yeah, and longevity is a key sort of pillar of what we're trying to do, because we've been successful in the kind of recyclability of our product. We do a lot of work ensuring that our products don't have twin shot kind of overmold unless they really need to, so that they're monomaterial, so they can be recycled. But that's great. We've done a huge amount of work in shifting to recycled polymers as opposed to virgin ones, and setting up relationships with suppliers in the Far East who can actually supply that sheer volume of recycled content, and that's also great. But actually, the kind of elephant in the room, in my view, is also the longevity piece, which is often kind of neglected.
You mentioned the paintbrushes and designing for longevity. Can you share any other sort of projects where you've done that, where you've sort of removed like the need for twin shot overmolding, or really aimed for repairability? And then at the same time, when you mentioned the recycled over virgin plastic, has it been quite easy to establish relationships with manufacturers and providers that can do that, or has that been something that's been like a long time coming?
Yeah. So in terms of examples, I mean, one of the examples which is one of our most recent pieces of work is our Erbauer power tools range, which is a kind of trade level power tools range that most people will probably be familiar with. And it's a big range. We do, I think there's over 60 power tools in that range, and that's kind of been our focus for the last couple of years. So the idea with that range was obviously to update the range, because technology had moved on since it was first launched 6 or 7 years ago. But the other thing we wanted to do was make the tools fully repairable, and And it's something that we're currently doing a little bit of in store. So you can take your drills back to store.
Oh, that's cool.
And we'll repair them and either give them back to you or resell them as refurbs. But actually, the power tools that we currently sell are not designed with that behavior in mind specifically. So where you have soldered connections, we've replaced those with push fit connectors. Where the PCBs are often glued in, we've replaced those with screws. So there's been a kind of total redesign of how of the internals of the tools to be able to kind of facilitate repairability. And that means that now not only can you take them into store to be repaired, you can actually repair them yourself. And we stock all the parts in store. So we stock the triggers, the motors, the PCBs, all that. So when your trigger switch goes, you can actually just open up the drill yourself, pop out the connectors and replace it yourself.
Oh, that's fantastic, because on it being a trade level tool, they see a lot of use and a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah.
So I think I wonder, does that also help? Because do you see that then that also creates a much more loyal, I suppose, customer base? Because you've got the tradespeople who use your tools go, well, but why would I buy a new one when I can just go and get it fixed and repaired?
Absolutely. I think that was one of the things when we were doing the kind of customer piece for that project, is we were kind of going onto trade sites and kind of asking people what their tools meant to them, and what their frustrations were, the classic kind of stuff. And one of the things that they were kind of all longing for was I guess what some of them had at the beginnings of their careers, but often also some of this with the younger guys, it was what their parents had, which was this ability to kind of keep and service and repair your tools, and they became something which got passed down.
Yeah.
It was a completely different relationship to the one we have now. I mean, these days, the drill goes, and most, I cycle around here and you see power tools in skips. They're completely disposable, and in a skip, those things are definitely not getting recycled.
Yeah.
So it's trying to slowly change that kind of relationship, and actually part of the piece there on top of the kind of repairability piece is actually starting to kind of think about how the actual form of the product needs to change to encourage that kind of relationship with the tool, which will then lead to it being repaired. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think if you've got a tool that you don't like and you don't have any particular affinity to, you're kind of waiting for it to break.
Yeah. So I'm like, I really have to use it again, because I don't want to go and buy something new until.
That's it. You're biding your time for it to break, and you're looking for an excuse for it to go.
Oh, it fell off the counter. What a shame.
Yeah. And then you can go and get a new shiny one, which is the latest and greatest. But actually, that's a failure in the design. There's no reason why these products can't be getting better with age, and there's no reason why the relationship between the user and the tool can't actually deepen with time, rather than kind of.
Absolutely, because if we repair our things, then we actually build a much deeper connection with them, because it's something that's now part of you, because you've sat down and taken the time and given it to do it and learn it, and because you then fixed it, you can kind of go, okay, I understand how it works, so I want to use it even more, because now I know I can fix it when it happens, and that's quite an empowering thing, I think.
Yeah, well. Absolutely. I mean, these things, for a tradesperson, the tools are their livelihood, and so they're very open to having those kind of relationships with their tools, because those tools are very kind of symbolic to their ability to earn. Without them, they can't earn.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just kind of going back to those kind of values that have maybe been lost of late because of the fact that tools have sort of become disposable things, and they get priced into the job. Someone will go and quote, and they'll just chuck in the cost of an extra drill on there, because they know that throughout the 2 or 3 month job that they're doing, one of their drills is going to go pop.
Yeah.
And they just become part of the material invoice.
Yeah. Oh,
which is bleak.
That is bleak.
So that's why with Earthhour we've tried to kind of reset that relationship. We've also launched a load on just within that same brand. We've launched a load of outdoor power tools as well, high voltage outdoor power tools. And the idea with those is to basically start offering landscape garden as an alternative to petrol.
Oh.
So at the moment, you've got your corded tools, you've got your cordless tools, and you've got your petrol tools. If you want to do a big garden, you can't use your corded tool because the cord's too short. You can't use a battery tool because the power is not equivalent to a petrol product. So all the landscapers just stick to petrol. And that's got to change. So we're launching a 72 volt range of tools this year, which are primarily lawnmowers. We've got a few extra bits in there as well. And the idea with that is to phase out petrol.
Yeah, and again, designed to be repaired.
And absolutely, yes, it's part of that repairability. That repairability piece carries through the whole range. Yeah.
I mean, because like I think one of the big things with design for repairability and is the fact that you then have to stock all the spare parts, and sometimes that can be an extra cost in the beginning. So when you're navigating that sort of thing with other department stakeholders within Kingfisher, how is that something? How are you advocating for that in a way that, like, given those realities of sort of business pressure?
Obviously, removing TPE overmold saves money, and that's this
makes everybody happy.
Yeah. So nearly all of the stuff that we do as a design function within the business is cost neutral, and that's important, I think, because actually this stuff doesn't need to cost more.
Yeah, that's a really important piece because that's something that I think we come across time and time again is saying, okay, well, if we replace glue with screws, or we replace this with this, or design for repair, that it is more expensive, or we have to use virgin plastic and it's more expensive, and cost is the thing that comes back to it. So being able to have that data and show that actually it doesn't, and in a large organization like Kingfisher, that's really great, because then we're talking about millions of units across many different countries. So being able to say, no, but it costs the same. So there's no reason why we shouldn't do this besides saying, oh, this is the way we've always done it. And it's great. Well, now we can do this. This can be the way that we always do it.
And that's what's happened actually. We obviously went to our suppliers with this wacky idea of no longer soldering all the parts together. And at first they looked at us quite puzzled.
They said, "Are you okay?"
Yeah, and they said, "Okay," because suppliers don't like doing stuff that's different, right? I mean, any kind of deviation from what they already offer usually comes at a cost price increase, and so you're constantly working within these very, very tight parameters and trying to leverage what they already do as much as possible. But actually, what we found in the case of the push fit connectors is that once they had kind of costed up the whole project and factored in the assembly time, or the savings in assembly time, there was actually no difference at all, despite the fact that there was a slight cost associated with the connectors themselves.
Yeah, because
the fact that they can be assembled so much quicker meant that there was no extra cost to the product.
So it actually saved time making this design.
Yeah, it saves time. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, because you're pushing just together, crimping and pushing.
Yeah, and off you go.
Rather than soldering.
Like now we have, because obviously in design declares we have our different sort of 8 acts, and the first one is declaring an emergency and acknowledging it. But one of them, which sounds like you guys have done really well, is called measure what we make.
Yeah,
and you've given like stats and data. Are you tracking that? And has that been quite easy to do, or are there other aspects of it that are quite difficult?
Yeah, so we're lucky because, as I say, it's all measured and it's all within essentially one organization. So unlike, when you work for an agency, you're kind of passing the product on to the client at the end of the project for them to kind of do with it as they please. With us, we've got it all covered from beginning to end. So it does mean that we can go back and revisit and we can extract data from our manufacturing process in a way which I guess a lot of people can't do.
Yeah.
So once we've launched the product, we'll usually follow up the following year, obviously check the sales to see how well it's done.
Yeah.
But also you can kind of measure the amount of material that has been used to create those products versus the previous version of that product. Because sometimes it isn't as easy as just removing material from the product, right? If you reduce your the amount of material in the product by 20%, but then there's an uplift in rejects on the production line by 20%, kind of a bit of a false economy. So it's kind of, sometimes we're kind of patting ourselves on the back a bit early. It's good to go back and try and understand the reality of it and whether it has been a success or not.
Yeah. And shifting it to the way we want to do it. Yeah. So then I know I said that was my last question, but I've just thought of the last thing I want to do is because of having been part of this and integrating such a big business, for people, for designers who are looking to shift it or integrate it more, have you got what would be your sort of one piece of advice for someone trying to build it in now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's a good question. There's so many things that one can do as a designer to help, right? To help on this journey. But I think, it's more about trying to do as much as you possibly can in each of the areas, because it's not going to be through one particular initiative that we kind of are able to kind of reach our goals. So I think it's important to kind of inform yourself about what can be done, what other people have done. I think it's important to kind of understand the realities of production, because I think often we're slightly divorced from that. And when you go out to China and you stand in a factory and you see it all there, and it's
a beast of manufacturing.
It never gets old for me. I mean, literally, I love it. But it's really quite sobering. And when you're coming from your Christian little studio in London to a massive factory,
you can't see the end
in Shanghai, it's like, wow, okay, so this is
it. This is the real deal.
This is the real deal. And there's so many factors at play out there, and so many things that mean that you can't do other things, and it's not as straightforward as kind of often what we think it is over here. So I guess that's probably a long-winded way of saying you need to get out to a factory
and take a look.
Brilliant.
Tom, thank you so much for joining us on the show, man, today. Thank you. Thanks very much, and I hope to see you at the next Design Declares event.
That's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.